Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning, wherever you are, whether you're on your way to work, whether you're cleaning up in the house, whether you're taking care of the kids, whatever you are doing. I hope this Wednesday brings you a fantastic day. Day before Halloween, actually, October 30th. And Halloween, it is, especially, I would argue, with a sort of sense of panic that seems to be steeped within the Democratic Party. And the way you see this, it's not so much the things that they say outwardly, it's what they tell themselves behind the scenes with recent conversations about panic and telling each other that they think Harris is going to lose, who they're going to blame, while you get Republicans who seem to be strutting with a certain level of confidence. That's just what it seems to be. I would say it goes beyond seems, so the polling kind of bears that out. This is going to be a fantastic show. I am hoping one of my guests dropped out at 8:15. I am trying to get Larry Johnson, and I really hope he can join me. He hit me up at 3:15 this morning, asking me what time did I want him on, and whether, basically if I wanted him. So I haven't heard from him yet. Fingers crossed. Hopefully we can get him. But otherwise, we still have a damn good show. Malik Abdul, the man, the legend, the one and only. The band will be back together. He is supposed to be here at 7:15. That should be really, really good. Esteban is going to join us, having a conversation about what's taking place on the ground in Lebanon. Apparently, Israel is suffering pretty heavy casualties. And on top of the heavy casualties that Israel is suffering, apparently, Gallant has come out and has effectively admitted we cannot accomplish our objectives militarily. So that is the context. That is what is taking place, especially what's taking place on the ground. I hope you guys can hear me okay. No issues with sound or anything like that. All good, all good. Thumbs up, all that good stuff. Okay, good. Since I spent so much time with it, I'm going to assume that it is working in the way it's supposed to work. Look, if you guys dig the content, if you enjoy the content, give it a like, share it. Like, share, subscribe. Definitely hit the notification bell. That's a little bell that's below the video. Oftentimes people tell me that they don't get a notification when I come on, so definitely hit the notification bell. Share it far and wide. We are trying to grow this channel. If you've noticed, we've grown up to 30,000, nearly 700. Let's push that number to at least 40,000 within a month. That's the objective. We want to hit 40,000 within a month. And we want this to be the best damn morning show on radio, TV, or anywhere for that matter. Also, if you really dig the content, if you really find yourself enjoying it and showing up here, anything that you can do to help the channel helps. Like I said, a like, share, a subscribe, a super chat, or for that matter, PayPal or Patreon. All of it helps the channel. That is my spiel. And let's now move on. What time is it? It is 7:09. Something interesting is happening in this election. And as it started off, not just the election, on the Israeli front, this idea that initially they could impose their will in the sense of killing women and children. They could do that. They're prolific at doing that. I can't even show you the images because they would demonetize the video if I even tried to show you the death and destruction that Israel has wrought. But we know it goes from 40,000 to 100,000 people that have been just slaughtered, 2/3 of which are women and children. Put that in context. We're talking about 20, 30,000 kids wiped off the face of the earth in a war that they are considering and calling self-defense. We self-defended ourselves against that baby on a bicycle. We defended ourselves against that 6-year-old. Yeah, okay. And of course, this murderous rampage is going into Lebanon, where they have done, for the most part, the same thing. However, as I've pointed out before, being able to kill and murder and slaughter a lot of people does not necessarily mean you win the war. The United States was able to kill a lot of people in Vietnam, millions. In fact, I believe we killed like 2 million people in Vietnam. We lost that war. We lost the war because murder is not exactly a war aim. There are things that you want to accomplish militarily. And if you kill civilians in the process of that, that is called collateral damage. That is not what is taking place with Israel. They seem to be on a rampage, on this kind of fascistic glee in killing and slaughtering women and children. It is utterly bizarre, and it's not necessarily something I have ever seen before. And I don't think it's something necessarily the American public has seen before, which is the reason why many of us are horrified by the genocide that they're effectively committing. But again, killing a lot of people is not the same thing as winning the war and accomplishing military objectives. A year has gone by. Israel is still in Gaza as we speak, and find themselves going back and forth in a way that is deleterious to the mental health of the soldiers that are involved. Not to mention, you're asking people to kill women and children. If there's any conscience left within those people are going to also have difficulties and qualms doing that. So the military is creaking at the seams. Gallant knows this. Gallant is Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, and comes out and says this.
Achieved through military operations alone. Power is not the essence of everything. To realize our moral and ethical duty to bring our hostages home, we will have to make painful concessions.
We will have to make painful concessions if indeed, A, we want to bring our hostages home. But as I pointed out before, Gallant is hiding the ball. The objective and the reason that they were killing all of those civilians, that they were blowing up hospitals, that they were blowing up schools, that they were blowing up mosques, that they were attacking UN buildings, that they were killing food workers, or for that matter, killing medical staff. The reason that they were doing that is because they expressly did not want those people to be in those areas. The objective was to create a larger, greater Israel. And in the process of creating that larger, greater Israel, you needed to starve various people in the north or kill those people in the north. You need to take southern Lebanon, which is the reason why they gave a surrender notice to Lebanon. But as he pointed out, we cannot accomplish our objectives through force alone. Basically, force is not the end-all be-all. There are going to be difficult concessions. Now, if they could have accomplished their objectives through force, they would have. They can't. Hence, that statement by Gallant. Now, Netanyahu disagrees with that. Netanyahu said it's bizarre that Gallant said that, and that their objectives are clear. Destroy Hamas, destroy Hezbollah, and occupy southern Lebanon so people in northern Israel can go back to their homes. It's been a year. They've been able to decimate the heads of Hezbollah, but they are still there, still firing rockets into Israel. It's been a year. They have destroyed and killed a lot of Hamas fighters, but those fighters are still there. And the key point here is Hamas is a resistance group. Hezbollah is a militia, well-armed militia, but a militia nonetheless. And what you notice is when they went after Tehran and they had that exchange, Tehran was able to show a certain level of dominance, A, being able to hit Israel pretty significantly and somewhat at will, and B, being able to deter Israeli aggression through a magnificent air campaign that was able to prevent and stop much of the attack that Israel was planning on that particular day. So, Gallant comes out and says, we need to reevaluate what we're doing. We've expanded the war. We've expanded this to such a degree that I think we're askew. And again, the Netanyahu point is, we are going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing. Gallant seems to, on some level, recognize limitation. Netanyahu does not. It is a fascinating dynamic between the two. It's not that they disagree. The country is a fascist country, so it's not that they disagree. It's what do we have the capability to do. And it's that point where the defense minister does not believe that they can accomplish this purely through force. It's fascinating to see what's taking place. Ghastly. It has reminiscent tones of what took place in Nazi Germany. This iconic pictures of people being burned alive in tents when they attacked a hospital. It's that. And yet, this genocide keeps going. And the administration that is in office right now gives it money, gives it support, bullets, bombs, missiles, diplomatic support, goes after the ICC for basically trying to interrogate, investigate war crimes. We are backing it. And all notions to the contrary are effectively lies. Lies that this administration telling to get from point A to point B. Either way, we have a damn good show for you today. And hopefully Larry can join us, because he can definitely get into this a little bit more and go in and discuss a little bit more. Next week, Monday, I believe, we're going to have Richard Wolff. And we're also going to get Caleb Maupin. He is going to be here next week also. So let's do this. Let's take a break. I'm going to try to get Malik to come on. You guys are listening to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Best damn show, radio, TV, internet, in general, that deals with talk, politics, domestic and international. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Jamal Thomas Morning Show, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am waiting on Malik. I don't know if he's still in bed. I guess I was not important enough for him to show up. I'm going to see if he can join me at 8 a.m. and see if that works. Either way, the show must go on. There are fascinating clips that came out yesterday on various issues, not just in the political space here in the United States, not just on the issue of Israel, or for that matter, even the war in Ukraine. Joe Biden has gone rogue. What do I mean by that? Joe Biden has a Mitt Romney energy associated with him. The reason, as I point out, that politicians, parties become far more shrill when they believe they're losing. Meaning when they feel like they're in a situation that it is getting out of their hand, it's getting away from them. And the reporting from Axios pointed out that people in the Democratic Party believed that Kamala Harris was either losing the race or was going to lose the race. And they were looking around for people to blame, even now. Now, I had this feeling, and it was coming across in several waves. I mean, at the point where you get Hillary Clinton calling people Nazis, and you get Joe Biden saying that Donald Trump needs to be locked up, or where you get Kamala Harris leaning into Trump's a fascist, Trump's a fascist. That level of rhetoric is so high key. I mean, keep in mind, Hitler got 50 million people killed. Hitler was putting people in ovens, and they are trying to somehow make an allegory to Trump and associate him with that. Okay, let's keep in mind, Dick Cheney and George Bush, and for that matter, Liz Cheney, Kamala Harris has folded arms around these people. All of a sudden, the Cheneys are these great statesmen because they are supporting Kamala Harris. Now, this is the same Dick Cheney and George Bush that lied this country into a war that got 1 million Iraqis killed. And Cheney wanted to go all the way to Iran, meaning kill, slaughter his way from one country to the next, going all the way out to Iran. Basically reshape the Middle East with American power using 9/11 as a pretext. Okay, that's the guy who she's calling a statesman, spending $7 trillion to do it, wasting thousands of American lives, and as I pointed out, over 1 million Iraqis dead on the low end. That's the person she's calling a statesman. And so, in this comparison of Trump to Hitler, who does not have a death toll anywhere near that, and I would argue that the death toll under Obama in trying to overthrow the Syrian government is even more than Trump. So this notion that Donald Trump is somehow Hitler falls flat. And not just falls flat. That's not just me saying it. A group representing Kamala Harris' super PAC comes out and makes it very clear that these attacks aren't working. In fact, the article, I believe, came out yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And what they say very clearly, A, the attacks aren't working. B, this notion that Donald Trump is exhausted, that's also another line of attack that's not working. And that all things being equal, Kamala Harris needs to start talking about herself. Basically, what are you going to do? Stop telling us who Trump is. Now, the reason it doesn't work and the attack line doesn't work is for something that I've said prior, that ultimately Donald Trump is a known quantity. The man had been president. The man has been head of the Republican Party for the last, 10 years, give or take. And all of the incoherent, weird shit that he says on a daily basis and has said over the course of the last several years is baked into the cake. Meaning the people who support him already know it. If anything, she is the undefined quantity. She is the quantity that they have a better chance of defining. And as I pointed out before, when you get 60 to 80% of the country saying the country is going in the wrong direction, and you get Kamala Harris saying, I'm a new way forward, and it says, okay, what is the new way? And she can't articulate the difference between herself and Joe Biden. So they've asked her this question over and over again. What would you have done differently during that term? What What will you do differently once you're in office? And how are you different than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in any of those situations? None of them did she have an answer. That looks bad. A, I'm a new way forward. But B, I can't really distinguish myself and tell you what that new way forward is. It's a contradictory message that comes out. In the article, they point that out. You need to start talking about yourself. People need to know what you're going to do in that office. And from the standpoint of the internal polling that they were getting, they don't feel that that's being communicated. Now, Harris, to her point, was like, well, you can attack both. That's not the way it seems, though. That's not the way it's panning out. There's no thematic vision. There's no big ticket thing that Harris wants to do. It just seems like she wants the office because she wants the office. And that is somewhat of an insufficient reason for it. Donald Trump, whatever you want to think of him, and whatever you want to think of supporters, he has supporters. He has a coalition. He has a huge number of people that are willing to stump, vote for him, and go out there and push for him. Harris has people who are terrified of Trump. Is that enough? That's the question, right? I don't have an answer to that question. And I guess we're going to find out on election day. At the very least, from the polling standpoint, they don't believe it's working. And to make that point clear, to understand this level of consternation that's coming out right here. If you look at the national polling, I've shown this chart before, but bear with me just for the people who haven't seen it. Back in September 14th, Harris is up 1.8. Harris is up 2 on September 27th. This is national polling. And look what happens. Tick up, tick up, tick up. With Harris having a precipitous drop, leaving Trump up 0.2. This is what's happening going into the election. And this is why they're getting far more shrill in regards to the things that they're effectively saying. Again, as they pointed out, that's not working. This notion of him being a fascist is baked into the cake. This notion of Donald Trump saying incoherent stuff is baked into the cake. What are you going to do? You need to somehow communicate that in order to change that momentum, alter that momentum, and correct what seems to be taking place in regards to the election. Now, we determine our presidents by battleground states. Okay, so what is it like in the battleground states? North Carolina, even. Another one with North Carolina, Harris up 1. North Carolina, Trump up 3. North Carolina, tie. Wisconsin, Trump up 1. Wisconsin, tie. Michigan, Trump up 1. Michigan, Trump up 1. Michigan, Harris up 5. Well, that's an anomaly. Pennsylvania, tie. Pennsylvania, Trump up 3. Pennsylvania, tie. And let's be very clear, she has to win Pennsylvania. If the Democrat loses Pennsylvania, the Democrats lose the race. Let's keep going. Nevada, Trump up 1. Arizona, Trump up 4. Georgia, Trump up 3. Now, those are the battleground states. The election will be determined in the battleground states. This is real clear politics. Real clear politics pulls pretty much all of the polling together. And you can kind of go through and they average it out and everything else. What you would notice, though, is that there is a trend line that seems to go in the direction of Trump, where he could very well sweep all of the battleground states. Now, if you're a Democrat, you can imagine, I can imagine you being freaked out right now. Also, if you're a liberal, I can imagine you being completely bewildered as to why it looks like that. And that bewilderment, I would tell you in software, when you're looking for a bug and trying to figure out why something is broken, why something's not working right, it's usually the anomaly, the thing that's not working in the way that you expected it to work, that gives you some kind of context as to the problem. How on earth is a blue-collar billionaire, a literal billionaire, running around screaming that he is the avatar of the working class. How on earth did the Democratic Party lose that mantle? The Democratic Party, for God knows longest time, was the avatar of the working class. They were the party that represented workers and the poor, etc. How did you get usurped by a billionaire in that very specific argument? I would say start there. Now, you could say misinformation. You could say people are racist, sexist, bigoted. You could say blacks are insufficiently loyal. You could say the Russians. You could say the Cubans. You could say the Iranians. But if you notice, all of these things are excuses in order to avoid any level of introspection as to what happened. How does a man this incompetent, this belligerent, this incoherent run around and take the lead? How? You need to interrogate that. Yeah, part of it is Gaza, fair enough. But a lot of it is this notion that Democrats have lost the thread of becoming elitists. And fact of the matter is the Democratic Party is supposed to be the release valve to the capitalistic system, meaning you have a capitalistic system that prioritizes the maximization of wealth. Fair enough. You get the Democratic Party or the Republican Party that is philosophically in line with that. Full well represented 1%, no issue. But that is not supposed to be the way the Democratic Party functions. They are supposed to be the party that is the release valve to that capitalistic system. This notion of a balancer to the worst aspects of our economic system, finding a political solution to those issues. But when you get to a situation where the parties become so negligible in regards to the differences, then it is hard for people to get up in the morning, which is why 50% of the public don't vote. And for that matter, which is why a lot of people don't see the point to get engaged. I've met people who are like, I have 2 jobs, man. I don't see how me voting had anything to do with improving my life. Okay, that's a Democrat issue. Republicans don't care about that. That's supposed to be a Democrat issue. And you go down the list. I guess my point is, there needs to be some level of honest introspection into how on earth you're losing to Donald Trump. And for that matter, why you're losing to Donald Trump. How did he take this mantle of being the fighter for the working class, fighting for jobs and these type of things? And more importantly, how did you lose it? I'm fascinated by that question. That being said, Joe Biden has apparently jumped on the campaign trail and has gone rogue. Now, reports were out that the Harris campaign had tried to stiff arm, create a bit of distance between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, believing Joe Biden was a liability. Okay, maybe he is, maybe he's not. But either way, Joe Biden has thrust himself onto the campaign trail, whether they want to or not. And in thrusting himself on the campaign trail, has come out and said this. And I would imagine Harris is going to try to clean this up, but at the very least, you're stuck with it. This is Joe Biden calling Trump supporters, 31% of the American public, garbage.
Demonization is unconscionable, and it's un-American. Or Puerto Rico, where I'm, my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters. Is demonization seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
That is a fascinating clip. That is a fascinating clip. Because it's pretty astonishing to call, 100 million people garbage? There's that. B, Donald Trump didn't say it, but and even if he did say it, you're attacking Americans that are supporting a particular political candidate. Even if the candidate said, and again, this wasn't something that Donald Trump said, this was something that one of the comedians said on stage in Madison Square Garden. Even if Donald Trump said it, What does that have to do with you calling 100 million Americans, 31% of us, garbage? Garbage. When Hillary Clinton said they're deplorables, that doesn't go over well. If you remember, when Mitt Romney came out and said, 42% of the country are takers, useless eaters of sorts. Well, that didn't go well for Romney. Romney was paying for that because, all things being equal, Obama had set the context that Romney was an elitist, that Romney was out of touch. And so when Romney comes out and says something like that, it's validated on some level by the comments that Romney made. What about this? Joe Biden is calling people trash. 31% of Americans are trash. Now, the dirty little secret. Oh, is Malik here? 1 second. The dirty little secret is that Democrats believe this. They believe it. Flesh to bone. They believe it. They may not say it, but between them and their God at 3 a.m., or between them and themselves at lunch dates, at functions, at any of those things, they full well believe it. We are back. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Show. I hope you guys are doing all right. Apparently, there was a bit of an echo, so I'm going to have to get Malik back here sooner rather than later to have a conversation. Can you guys hear me all right? Is there any distortion? Am I too loud? It is difficult for me to do both at the same time, meaning talk to and watch the audience while all of a sudden do the interview itself. Maybe the better way to do it is to do a sound check before each interview. So I'll institute that going forward to correct any anomalies. But can you guys hear me okay currently? Yes, we can hear you, bro. Thank you for that. Look, if you guys are digging the content, give it a like, share it. You can always support the content through PayPal, Patreon. Apparently, let's see, there was something that I'm supposed to know. There we are. The well-dressed nerd. JT, try StreamYard. It's set up. It's easier to manage and free. That way you can take time away current platforms, audio kinks. I am using StreamYard. And maybe part of the problem is me getting familiar with the usage of StreamYard. So today is like my first day using it for the show. So it'll get more ideal. Anastasia Beaverhausen, Kamala's Jewish husband, say he'll mount at Missoula on the White House door if she's installed. Missoula on the White House door if she's installed, signifying the Jewish conquest of the White House. No hiding it. I mean, honestly, man, that conquest has already taken place. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the policy that the Biden administration has been going with, there's a clear direction in the context of that policy. Even Harris, when Harris is, saying stuff like I don't know if I have I don't have the clip loaded. But when Harris is asked this question about what are you going to do different on this issue? What are you going to do different on this issue? What are you going to do different on this issue? And Harris doesn't like to answer. Well, that kind of gives you an intent of where they're going. I mean, let's be honest for the moment. The Biden administration, people say that Joe Biden is not in his right mind. I've said as much. But if you notice, when people are on air and we're having a conversation about it, the first thing I say is, no, Joe Biden is agency. Meaning, Joe Biden is still going in a particular direction, any way you look at it. That direction just so happens to be pro-war, this elitist attitude, this triumphalism, this American exceptionalism, this notion that we're not going to make deals, we're not going to come to some kind of agreement. Any agreement that we make has to be done from a position of strength. Ergo, forever wars, whether that's in Syria, whether that's in attempting a war in Taiwan against China, or for the matter, what's taking place in Ukraine. That is, Trump is not a peacenik. Let's be very clear. But he does break orthodoxy in the sense that he's willing to make a deal in a way that the Democratic Party is just fundamentally not willing to make a deal. There's that. We need something different. And we need a different model. And honestly, what I really would wish is that Trump was more coherent. And on issues of foreign policy, he doesn't just accept the things that Kamala Harris says. Like, he may say, well, Liz Cheney is a warmonger. But he doesn't go further into that. He can't necessarily explain, well, we're expanding to the border of Russia. This is obviously going to be a problem and it's something that we wouldn't tolerate ourselves. He's not going to say that. He can't make the argument about the Cuban Missile Crisis, how this is a reverse Cuban Missile Crisis. And as if we understood the issue during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that our security and integrity matters, then why don't theirs? He can't make that argument. He seems to be incoherent, but at the very least, all things being equal, whether you can make the argument or not, there's something wrong with Harris. And the campaign is showing problems. So there's that. I want to talk for the moment about the Democratic Party and what I would argue is a problem, a serious problem with liberals. I have often made the point that says liberals are oblivious to defects and certain problems associated with them. Victoria Nuland is a really good example of this. Nuland was on Rachel Maddow, of all places. And I want to play this clip because Nuland is one of these creatures of Washington. She is one of the worst people on the planet. Anytime there's a coup, anytime a government is getting overthrown, anytime there's a specter of the government being overthrown, you will find Victoria Nuland. In one administration after the next, she has worked with regime change and this notion of knocking over governments for decades. She is just retired when it seems like the Ukraine issue hit the skids. But nevertheless, she's still moving around, she's a mover and shaker, and she's still welcome on these shows as if she's just a great person, as if she's a statesman. You know what it puts me in mind of? Madeleine Albright. Well, Madeleine Albright went on that network television show. I forget the exact name of the show. I think it was like 60 Minutes. And the woman asked her, Leslie Stahl, I believe. I could be wrong on the person, but either way. They asked Madeleine Albright, hey, it seems that over 500,000 kids have died as a result of the sanctions that you and your administration passed. What do you have to say about that? That seems like it's a very high number. And Madeleine Albright, without a batting an eye, said, I think it was necessary. That's pretty astonishing. Somebody tells you, hey, your policies killed 500,000 kids. And you're not aghast by it. You're not bothered by it. In fact, you double down on it and say, I'm pretty sure that's perfectly okay. Nuland and things that she has done has killed scores of people. Liberals, because it is taking place under a Democratic administration, have zero issue with it. So if we want to antagonize Russia, move to the border, try to surround the country, liberals have no issue with it. The only thing they see is this is Russian aggression. They don't see that they're expanding to the border of a country as aggression. Maybe they should. Meaning they don't see how their policies create the world to which we have. And when Biden go to the United Nations and act as if I've done fantastic in this office and the world is literally in flames, that is somewhat of a problem. And I would argue that is a problem with liberals. This is Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland is having an interview with Rachel Maddow. And I want you to hear, again, this reeks of desperation, what they have now gone to once again. Russia, Russia, Russia. let's see, Victor, clip number 4. That is not clip number 4. Clip number 4. Oh, where is it?
Into the White House. How do you assess the magnitude and the type of interference they're attempting this year compared to what they've done in his previous 2 elections?
Well, as you said earlier, Rachel, he's at it again. This time he's not even trying to hide his hand, and he has far more sophisticated tools. You know, his AI is better, so he can make these fake videos. He has done things like spend $10 million trying to buy American influencers and get them parroting his lines and not even know it's happening. But he's also got a brand new, very, very powerful tool, which is Elon Musk and X. You know, in 2020, the social media companies worked hard with the U.S. government to try to do content moderation, to try to catch this stuff as it was happening. But this time, we have Elon Musk talking directly to the Kremlin and ensuring that every time the Russians put out something like this, it gets 5 million views on X before anybody can catch it. So it's quite dangerous. Although I do think the American electorate has gotten more sophisticated and more savvy about this stuff.
I hope you heard that. That, according to her, the Russians have a new device that can help them get Trump elected, and that new device is Elon Musk. And that in 2020, things were phenomenal. And because things were phenomenal in 2020, Elon Musk is now a problem. Okay, first and foremost, in 2020, you had the laptop story that people like Maddow boosted as Russian disinformation, newspapers boosted as Russian disinformation, and you had the situation where Twitter put the New York Post in jail for reporting on the laptop, claiming it was Russian disinformation. The FBI knew very early on, back in 2019, that it was not Russian disinformation, that it was indeed Hunter Biden's laptop. And worse come to worse, if they wanted to know, they could have just asked Hunter Biden, hey, is this your laptop? The wild part about it is that if you remember, when they got on the campaign stage and Biden and Trump were in a debate, Trump brings up the laptop. Joe Biden says 51 intelligence officials says that has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And they moved on using this as being fake news, or for that matter, disinfo. Okay, fast forward. Then you get newspapers saying, oh, by the way, the laptop is real. A year later, when they were past the election, and not only is it real, the charges that were applied to Hunter Biden used information coming out the laptop to go after and to prosecute Hunter Biden. So what they were calling disinformation, what they were locking up in Twitter jail, what they used to basically undercut the election in 2020. Because let's be clear, and let's be honest for the moment. In 2020, when Trump brings this out because part of his thesis and part of his argument was they're corrupt, that this is Biden Inc. Joe Biden is fundamentally corrupt as a politician. This laptop is evidence of that level of corruption. That was his point. That was the angle to which he was going with. Okay. In order to deal with that, Blinken was able to arrange a bunch of spooks to write a letter saying, this is fake. This is fake news. This is not real. This is the Russians interfering in our elections. Those 53 intelligence officials were lying. They were pulling it squarely out of their ass. The FBI knew they were pulling it squarely out of their ass. And yet that letter went through. The FBI didn't say anything. When Facebook went to the FBI and said, hey, is this real? They told them, we have no idea. When really, in actuality, they did know. My point is that by definition, that is election interference. Donald Trump went running around the country screaming about the election being stolen, talking about fraud, fraud. You get the pillow man, fraud. When really, the honest truth is that the election interference was all of those agents getting involved, lying to the American public in mass. They've done this a few times, by the way. Trump and Russia was a mass psyop that Hillary Clinton played on the American public in order to avoid dealing with the fact that Hillary Clinton lost. This was a mass psyop in order to deal with the fact that they were bringing up the laptop and the things that were in that laptop as an argument against Joe Biden. What Nuland, Queen of Chaos, Princess of Destruction, what she is effectively saying is things were so much better when we had Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, when we had all of these things and they were all working to the ends of censorship and preventing certain information from going to the American public that maybe the American public, from our point of view, don't need to know, especially if it's going to inhibit them voting for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or for that matter, Hillary Clinton. Liberals, or the left, I would argue, is getting the war wrong. The reason I say they're getting the war wrong is because there needs to be an honest assessment of what would we do as a country if something was taking place. Meaning, how would the United States act if Russia put missiles on the border of Mexico? How would we take that? Would the United States say, well, I mean, Mexico is an independent country. Mexico can do whatever it wants. If it wants to put missiles on the border aimed at us, they can do that. If Mexico wants to build up a massive army funded by the Russians with all sorts of technology given to them, hypersonic missiles included, and they want that on the border of Mexico, again, Mexico is an independent actor. Mexico can do whatever it wants. Do you really believe that the United States would take that point of view? Or do you think the U.S. will say, either those missiles move or we will end the world? And I'm telling you, it's that one. The reason I know it's that one is because the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was that. Move it or we will end the world. The situation flips and all of a sudden, we're completely oblivious. Russia doesn't get claims in regards to security. We're doing the same thing in Taiwan right now with this notion of antagonizing China to get them embroiled into some kind of larger war. And let's be very clear, Israel-Palestine, that is also a settler colonial state that the United States is using as a proxy in the Middle East to affect U.S. policy in that region of the world. We have these pieces on the board, and we use these pieces on the board to commit chaos in order to maintain a certain level of control. Liberals are perfectly okay with this, which is the reason why Dick Cheney, George Bush, Liz Cheney, these other neocons are thoroughly comfortable with supporting and backing Kamala Harris. I'm saying that we need a revolution in regards to the way we deal with our neighbors and our foreign policy, and it's not been to our betterment. In fact, it's been to our detriment. The reason that BRICS exist in the first place is because we started using the dollar as a weapon, and we have this elitist attitude where we consider ourselves indispensable, and if we are indispensable, by definition, everybody else is dispensable. You can imagine if you're talking to somebody and you're telling them, I am the greatest thing ever, and you are lesser. That is not going to be something that they're going to tolerate all that well. I would imagine people griped at it in the 80s, but in the 2000s, obviously, that is not something they're going to tolerate. I'm saying our tenor in the world has turned people off, and turned people off in a way where they have become associated with each other, grouping together as a way of dealing with us as a hegemon. It is our behavior that is creating these difficulties. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to be back. You guys are listening to the Jamal Thomas Show. Back shortly. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right. Look, I apologize for some of the technical glitches. I'm using a new system. I'm trying to improve the process and better the process. And sometimes it gets a little weird. And yes, I do need an engineer. By the same token, I'll get better with it. The first week was a train wreck. I just anger and rage at myself over that first week. But things have been getting better. And it's only going to get better. My job is to have the best damn morning show ever in the history of radio, television, all that good stuff. And I need you guys to help me to grow. So definitely share the content. Definitely give it a like if you like it. And definitely comment if you want to join in on the conversation. This is going to be politics, news, domestic and political. And my goal is to get damn good guests to come on the show. My objective is to grow. And to be fair, we have been growing. We've jumped 200, 300 people over the course of the last week. So let's keep it up. The objective is to get to 40,000, hopefully by Christmas. If we can get it before Christmas, even better. To do that, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will be here from Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., 10 a.m., Eastern Standard Time. And by the way, I tend to pop in at all sorts of hours too, so definitely hit the notification bell. I am an insomniac, and ever since leaving fault lines, my bedtime is all over the place. But I hope you guys are enjoying the show up to this point. I'm going to have to get Malik back on. In fact, I may try to get him back on tomorrow, since there was a bit of an echo on his talk. That being said, one of the other interesting things that has taken place, Kamala Harris is giving her closing arguments. What I mean by closing arguments, it's my final thesis. This is the reason that you should elect me. This is the reason you should vote for me. Now, some of this came along on the border. I got to be honest, I don't necessarily think her dealing with immigration is all that helpful to her, because all things being equal, she's not necessarily trusted on the issue of the border. But at one of her speeches, again, pointing out this level of, I guess, shrillness, this level of desperation associated with it. And again, for the people who are just now getting here, early on in the show, I pointed out the reason for the desperation in the campaign. This. If you look at the race going all the way back, September 18th, she's up to national polls. And as you can see, Trump starts to move up and up and up until you get to now, where Donald Trump is 0.4 up. And I will tell you this, 2 days ago, it was only 0.2. A few days before that, it was only 0.1. So going into the final stretch, there's a level of momentum that is associated with the Trump campaign that up to this point, at least for the last several weeks, Harris has not been able to find a way to chill, to stop, or in any way inhibit. That is creating a certain level of desperation in the campaign, which is the reason why you're getting Trump is Hitler, his supporters are Nazis, or Joe Biden coming out saying his supporters are trash. Yes, he said it literally. It's that. It's desperation. If she was winning, if there was a momentum going into that was in her favor, if internal polling showed that she is strong in these various states and in these various areas, I guarantee you she would be talking about joy. I am a joyful campaign. I believe in joy. That's what I believe in. Hope, joy, and $1 billion. That's me, Kamala Harris. That is not the way they're running that campaign. That is not the things that they are saying. They are using every attack line under the sun. And again, the attack line, anytime somebody invokes Hitler, who has got 50 million people killed, who sent Jews to the ovens, I think like 6 million, and you're comparing that to Hitler, Trump to Hitler, you're off the rails. Something is fundamentally wrong. And what's fundamentally wrong is this. Our elections are not determined by the popular vote. They're determined in battleground states. And when you look at battleground states, North Carolina, tie. North Carolina, Harris up 1. North Carolina, Trump up 3. North Carolina, tie. Wisconsin, Trump up 1. Wisconsin, Trump tie. Michigan, Trump up 1. Michigan, Trump up 1. Harris up 5. Okay, that is an anomaly. Pennsylvania, tie. Pennsylvania, Trump up 3. Pennsylvania, tie. Arizona, +1 for Harris. Arizona, +4 for Trump. Nevada, +1, Trump. Nevada, tie. Nevada, +1, Trump. Georgia, +3, Trump. I think you see what I'm getting at. It's trending heavily towards Trump. He can literally take every battleground state. Now, to be fair, these are within the margin of error. But even though I don't know the specific number, meaning I don't know this esoteric number that represents what the American public is at any particular moment of the election, I do know trends. And I can see when the polling is moving in a particular direction. And I guarantee you, internal polling, the Harris campaign has herself. Hence, the shrill attacks. Trump is a fascist. Trump is racist. Trump is Hitler, etc., etc. At her campaign event, Harris also said this. Where is it? Which one is it? She went on to point out, I think it's this one.
Issue to scare up votes in an election. And instead treat it as the serious challenge that it is, that we must finally come together to solve. I will work with Democrats and Republicans to sign into law the border security bill that Donald Trump killed. When I was Attorney General of a border state, I saw the chaos and violence caused by transnational criminal organizations that I took on. And when I am president, we will quickly remove those who arrive here unlawfully, prosecute the cartels, and give Border Patrol the support they so desperately need. Who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
I hope you heard that. I hope you heard that. I want to play that one more time. Trump, in a fair and free election, which is, well, fair enough, sent an armed mob to the Capitol to overturn the results of the election. I want to play that one more time. I just want to nail that down.
Treating immigration as an issue to scare up votes in an election. And instead treat it.
You quoted.
Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
Now, whatever you think of Trump, whatever you think of Trump, and I would argue, as I've argued before, it is a deal breaker, the fact that Donald Trump didn't want to accept the election results. Deal breaker. He would never come out vote for that. By the same token, Donald Trump did not tell those people to go to the Capitol. They are not charging Donald Trump with an insurrection. They were there because of Trump. And they did rampage the Capitol and everything else inspired by what Trump was saying. But sending an armed mob to the Capitol to overthrow the election results. Again, this is what I mean when I'm saying this stuff is getting more shrill. That is not what happened by any stretch of the imagination. Now, if you're in Democratic circles and you're talking to each other, that's perfectly acceptable. Perfectly acceptable. And I would say something else. Joe Biden calling people trash, a clip that I played earlier today, clip number 6.
They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters. Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
The only garbage I see out there are his supporters. Again, if you're talking to liberals, this is what they think. This is how they think. This is what they say to each other at 3 a.m. between them and their God. That will get no pushback in liberal circles. Malik is right. That all things being equal, they talk like that to each other. They don't fundamentally understand why somebody would vote for Trump. And because they don't fundamentally understand why somebody would vote for Trump, it seems abnormal. It seems odd. It seems bizarre. They don't quite understand how they lost the mantle of being the party of the working class. They don't understand how a blue-collar billionaire who is getting money, $75 million from Elon Musk, $100 million from Miriam Adelson in order to steal the West Bank. They don't understand how the public gives him that mantle of being the party of the working class and how it sees them as being elitists. The argument I've made here is that if the Democratic Party wants to somehow change and become something else, they need to figure that out. They need to have some level of introspection into why the public sees them as something that they don't fundamentally see in themselves. And for that matter, how Donald Trump, incoherent, not having done anything, is all of a sudden gaining momentum. Because let's be clear, it's not like these guys had a debate recently, and after the debate, it was catastrophic for Harris, in which case her polling dropped. It's not that. It's not like Donald Trump went out here and just knocked something out of the park. It's not that. He hasn't done anything. He's still incoherent. He's still saying wild shit. And all things being equal, his rallies are, I don't quite get the appeal personally. But what I would give him credit for is every so often he talks about business. He talks about work. I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to bring back jobs. I'm going to use tariffs. I'm going to punish companies who are trying to send their jobs overseas. People hear that. Democrats don't get to hear that. But people who are not Democrats, they do hear that. And from their point of view, it does matter. And he would make this argument, things were great when I was president. Are you better off 4 years ago than you are today? Truth of the matter is Donald Trump exploded the debt by $9 trillion. If you remember, when the Republican Party, under Obama, they said, I'm not going to put one damn red cent on the back of my grandkids, Obama. And then Trump gets elected, and they up the debt ceiling, $9 trillion. $9 trillion. Under Joe Biden, at least this term alone, we are $2 trillion deficit, meaning we're $2 trillion over what the federal government is bringing in. At no point is this brought up with nearly $36 trillion in debt. And the amount that we pay to service the debt is about as much as we pay for the military budget, which is nearly $1 trillion a year. Doesn't come up. Doesn't seem to be an issue. Nobody cares about it. It's not even an issue that Democrats make in regards to Republicans, because I imagine from their point of view, they want to continue to run those deficits. And if you bring it up as an issue, you're stuck with dealing with the fact that you're running a deficit. The irony of it is, for all of the talk that Republicans have about debts, deficits, Democrats are big spenders. It's Republicans that are big spenders, every bit as much as Democrats. The only difference is what they try to spend the money on. The reality of it is both, or at the very least Trump, wants to have a grotesque tax cut. Trump wants to decimate the tax base with no tax on tips, etc. And it's not that I'm even against it, depending upon what it looks like in practice when it's implemented. But let's be very clear, he is going to balloon the deficit that much more. And I have yet to hear the Democrats say anything about it. Meaning, there's a pitch, there's an argument that you can make that will be more coherent. They just don't seem to be capable of making it. And Kamala Harris is not necessarily the best candidate to carry that message. And I will say something else just before I close this, because I want to go to the Israel thing. Joe Biden has done her no favors. A, he's wed himself to her, meaning he is so wed to her that with 60 to 80% of the country saying they want something different, she can't distinguish herself from that same Joe Biden, despite the fact saying she's a new way forward. There's that. The other thing is that they didn't have a primary. Believe it or not, I know Democrats think that going through a tough primary is a negative. It's not really. You are able to have debate after debate after debate, talking about democratic ideas, things that you want to do, things that you believe in, and you're able to do that for months on end. And in being able to do that for months on end, not only do you solidify your candidate, you get used to the attacks that are being leveled at your candidate. You are undercutting some of those attacks, meaning that attack comes in, it gets seeped into the public, in which case it can't necessarily be used against you as a weapon anymore, and certainly not a weapon within the last month going into the election. That would have been to her benefit. Now, maybe she would have lost that primary, but even if she would have lost the primary, you still would have ended up with a candidate that was better, and that would have been your strongest candidate. The way it ended up happening was so chaotic that you basically thrust her into a race with 3 months to go without her being able to get this kind of longer duration of explaining to the American public who she is. Now, it's very possible Kamala Harris would have failed at doing that, potentially. But we don't know that, right? Because at the end of the day, that is not what happened. And whereas she had the glow in the very beginning, that glow has fundamentally and irreparably faded. Let's take a quick break, because I do want to hit the Israel topic, because I am fascinated by this. It has become clear, even to Israel itself, that it cannot win the war that it has taken on itself. That the enemies that are against it are too numerous. And whether it's like a pack of bees, a hornet's nest, something should have been made clear that the fact that they're still in Gaza to this day, and that they're still facing opposition to this day after a year, going after a resistance group that they couldn't necessarily quell against Hezbollah, they're having far worse of a time. They've talked about, 2,600, nearly 3,000 injuries, not to mention the number of tanks and equipment that Hezbollah have been able to destroy. And despite the decapitation strikes on Hezbollah, they are still currently active, still firing missiles and still fighting, and apparently chewing up Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon right now. I'm going to take a quick break. This is going to be a quick turnaround. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are digging the content. If you like it, please give it a like. Please share it. Comment. I'm trying to grow this channel. Hit your notification bell just so you will be notified when I pop in. I tend to pop in at all times of the day or night, despite the fact that it's Jamal Thomas Morning Show. At that point, it's just Thomas after hours or Thomas in the day. Either way you look at it. I plan on being the best damn morning show in the world. Yes, I have technical difficulties. This is my second week, but I'm getting those straight and getting those ironed out. Either way, like, share, subscribe. If you really like it, Super Chat, PayPal, Patreon, all Super Chats will be read, provided racist, sexist, bigoted, etc. I'm getting better at that process. I'm trying to grow. I need your help in order to do so. So definitely give it a like and definitely share it far and wide. Matthew Miller is a State Department spokesman. Matthew Miller is one of the most slimy, disgusting degenerates that the White House has on its roster. And it has a few. And Matthew Miller is one of the worst. He gets out there day after day after day and lies through his teeth, misrepresents, or is just radically disingenuous as a benefit and as a defender of Israel. Killing kids is Israel's self-defense. If you bring up to him, hey, they seem to be doing this. What about these instances? The kid that was out there riding his bike that they shot, and when people went to help him, they dropped bombs on him. Well, we're looking into that, and I'll let Israel speak for itself. What do you mean? You got to let Israel speak for itself. You're giving them all of this money, weapons, guns, and everything else. You don't have anything to say about it? Nope. And goes along with the smirk and keeps it moving. The press is getting a little antsy with Miller because at this point, they know the game. They've seen this game for a year. And if you're the State Department spokesperson, you're a press agent sitting in the State Department and in the press corps, for a year, you tell the press, we are pressuring Israel. We're pressuring Israel. We're trying to get Israel to do this. We're trying to get Israel to do that. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. We're working on a deal. We're working on a deal. Hamas is the issue. Hamas is the issue. Israel has a deal. Why would Israel be against his own deal? If you deal with that for an entire year and you know he's lying through his teeth, you too will get a bit antsy in dealing with someone like that when you are continuously being lied to. The press corps has been getting more annoyed with Matt Miller. And this is part of the commentary. Let's play the clip.
Puerto Rico, where my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
Okay, Joe Biden, I need you to shut up. Where is it?
We have consistently urged the Georgian government this year.
And that is, the secretary has said, you've said, whatever Israel. Okay, but I'm just having trouble understanding how the two things add up, and that is, the secretary has said, you've said, whatever Israel is doing to ensure more aid goes into Gaza, that has fallen off significantly. There hasn't been a sustained effort, and they have not been doing enough for a sustained period of time. How does that not mean that they are impeding? They're not impeding aid.
They call it a war. It's not a war. There is no opposing army. It is really a slaughter that we have. And I don't want to enter into political.
Saeed, is the stipulation that there are no Hamas fighters left who are still shooting at the IDF soldiers?
Yes.
I can't stand him. Look at the smirk. Look at the smirk. He thinks that he got some kind of point. The point that the journalist was making, and I'm going to play the clip further, but he's trying to point out This is not two militaries going at each other. Meaning, this is not Israeli military with nukes, tanks, American weaponry, UK weaponry, getting all the logistics, support, intelligence, and everything else from the US military, going against a Hamas military of equal standing. Hamas is a resistance group. That's his point. Meaning, they are just killing women and children for the most part. Again, the overwhelming majority of the people that have been killed are women and kids. When they are leveling apartment buildings, when they are leveling schools, when they're attacking mosques, when they're attacking UN buildings, when they're slaughtering journalists, or for that matter, food workers, doctors. You should see the letters that Doctors Without Borders have put out basically saying, stop killing our doctors. Or for that matter, stop preventing aid from going in. The United States government itself came to an assessment that they were starving Palestinians. Blinken went out there and lied, and people like Matt Miller, of course, is going to cover for the Israeli government. The press, and the reason they're pressuring him, is because the United States government put out this notion that we're going to give you 1 month, Israel, and in 1 month, we are going to make a determination on whether or not we are going to continue to provide in the way that we've provided. Now, the reporting is that the Israeli government doesn't believe that because everything the Biden administration said up to this point, Netanyahu has made him look silly. I've never seen a situation where the president has been sidelined and looked this incompetent, this weak, this flaccid, this emancipatorily impotent. I don't know if those words go together, but hell, I'll go with it. I've never seen a situation like this. And so you have this kind of weak president leading into the election with Netanyahu, who honestly probably would prefer Trump to get elected in general because he believes Trump is going to be more vociferous in his support, despite the fact that Joe Biden has given him everything that he wanted. And so the press is annoyed. And the press is pointing out, you said you were giving them 1 month to allow aid into the country. If you need to give them 1 month to allow aid into the country, doesn't it mean that they are preventing aid from going into the country? Well, of course, Miller doesn't want to say that, so Miller is going to come up with some other excuse. Saeed, I believe his name, points out, this is just slaughter. We can see it before our eyes every day. This is slaughter. How are you sitting up here and pretending like that's not the case? Miller is like, well, aren't there Hamas fighters out there? Yes, they are Hamas fighters, but they're not fighting military. The overwhelming majority of the people that Israel is killing are children. That is the point that Saeed is trying to make. I'm sorry, I interrupted the clip. Let's go back to it.
Understanding how the two things add up, and that is the secretary has said, you've said, whatever Israel was doing to ensure more aid goes into Gaza, that has fallen off significantly. There hasn't been a sustained effort, and they have not been doing enough for a sustained period of time. How does that not mean that they are impeding? They're not impeding aid.
They call it a war. It's not a war. There is no opposing army. It is really a slaughter. That we have, and I don't want to enter into political.
Saeed, is the stipulation that there are no Hamas fighters left who are still shooting at the IDF soldiers?
Yes, of course there are Hamas fighters.
That's before you rename the conflict let's have facts. Let's just establish facts about what is actually happening.
And what we see day after day is a slaughter. It is a slaughter. I think there will come a time when you guys have to quote exactly what it is, because every day, I asked this question several weeks back about, Palestinians get up every day, for another 100 days, for another 100 days, and this keeps going on. There is no end in sight. It doesn't seem that Israel has any incentive to basically indulge even in serious.
On your own letter of the 13th of October, you warned in there, about the effects of legislation to ban UNRWA, and you said to Gallant and Derner, we ask that you take all possible steps, whether with lawmakers or using the authorities of the Prime Minister's office to ensure this doesn't come to pass. I mean, that part, it seems they've already clearly ignored because the vote's passed. So they've had 2 weeks to work with lawmakers to stop it, and they're not listening to you.
The bill has passed, so...
But you asked them to work with lawmakers to ensure this doesn't come to pass, so that part you've already lost on.
I hope you understand the point that he's making. You have pressed them not to get rid of UNRWA. They passed legislation to get rid of UNRWA. Does that mean that they're not paying attention to you? Basically, that they don't care, that you don't matter, you don't factor into their decision-making process. And he's like, well, they passed the law. Precisely the point that I'm trying to make to you. So you don't matter to them. And understand why. You've given them a blank check. If I've given you a blank check, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to back you to the hilt regardless of what you do. And then I say, but please don't do so-and-so. What incentive do you have to not do X or Y? Which is the point that the reporter is trying to make. You've given them a blank check. They fundamentally ignored you all the way through for the past year. That's assuming that the White House actually is against the policy, which is something I don't know. I don't know if it's the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail, all things being equal. I guess the point that they're trying to make is you seem to be sidelined in this conversation if indeed your position is what you say your position is. From the standpoint of Israel, again, they've gotten a blank check. But despite the fact of having a blank check, they've been incapable of accomplishing their military objectives. Now understand, their main military objective was to eliminate Hamas, basically to fundamentally destroy Hamas. Hamas will not exist as an entity. That was their point. That was what Netanyahu said he wanted to do. Okay, fair enough. We're going to destroy Hezbollah. Fair enough. We're going to cut the head of the snake. Fair enough, talking about Iran. And keep in mind, in each of these situations, it evolved. Meaning Netanyahu expanded the war. He escalated the war. So it wasn't at a certain point just Gaza. Then it became the West Bank. Then it became Lebanon. Even attacks on Yemen. Even attacks on Syria. And now exchanging fire with Israel. The war is evolving. Now there's the pretending that all of this stuff started on October 7th. I'm going to assume that all of you are more competent to believe that nonsense and realize that this predated like 70 years going back to the first Nakba. So let's not even dwell on that particular point. What's interesting to me is that after a year, all the missiles, bombs, weapons, political support, again, nukes, Hezbollah or Hamas is still there. After months of going after Hezbollah, after cutting the head off the snake, as they call it, meaning killing all the leadership, after the exploding pagers business, Hezbollah is still there. And what is reported is that Israeli troops are beginning to crack and suffer from issues of depression, issues of melancholy. Part of the problem is that they would clear an area, leave, and then have to go back. They clear the area again, and then leave and go back and clear the area again. This was the reporting that was coming out. Some of the soldiers were committing suicide. The army, the military, is not doing that well. Israel's military is set up for air campaigns or, for that matter, short spurts, this kind of blitzkrieg action in the way that they would go out, these kind of short, quick bursts in order to put down resistance groups. So if they need to kill women and children, they can do that. They can do it in mass. They can do it extraordinarily well. If you're looking for an army that can kill civilians, they are phenomenal. Best in the world at slaughtering civilians. But again, there's a difference between slaughtering civilians and winning a war. Those are two very different things. The indiscriminate killing of human beings does not necessarily mean that you will win a war. Think back to Vietnam. The United States was going against the Vietnamese. The United States took a policy of basically, if we can kill a lot of people, then by definition we're winning. So the more bodies that we can stack up of the Vietnamese, the more indication that we are winning this conflict. The United States lost the Vietnam War. We packed up. We left. Vietnam is still there. Despite the fact that we killed, 2 million Vietnamese or something to that effect, I think the numbers goes up to 4 million, they were still able to win because we were not able to accomplish our objectives. Now again, going back to Israeli objectives, we're going to eliminate Hamas. After a year, Hamas is still there. We're going to get rid of Hezbollah. We're going to allow settlers to go back to the north of Israel. Okay, fair enough. That has not happened. And not just has not happened, you have an economy that is in a fundamental tailspin. Many of the people have left the country because they don't feel safe. All of these things bespeak a death spiral for the state of Israel. And that doesn't even get into the notion of what is going on with the military. You're asking soldiers to kill civilians wantonly. Okay, if there's any conscience whatsoever, people will have issues with that, as some of the soldiers have talked about having issues with it. This notion of back and forth with no end in sight, again, that works on the nerve of a soldier. If you are going into an area that you know is hostile territory, and at any moment somebody can pop out and put a bullet in you or hit you with a drone, you can imagine there's a certain bit of apprehension associated with the task that you've been given. And if you are having to go back over and over and over again in this repetitive fashion where it doesn't seem like you can ever really clear the area, because as soon as you leave, the area is once more reoccupied and you have to go back and clear the area, that wears on the military. And my point is, it has been wearing on the Israeli military based on their own reports. So Gallant, Israeli defense minister, comes out, and Gallant, in somewhat of a surprising admission, says this. Clip number 5.
Not all objectives can be achieved through military operations alone. Power is not the essence of everything. To realize our moral and ethical duty to bring our hostages home, we will have to make painful concessions. Not all objectives can be achieved through military operations alone. Power is not the essence of everything. To realize our moral and ethical duty to bring our hostages home, we will have to make painful concessions.
So, despite having nukes, despite having support from the UK, France, well, I don't know about France anymore, but the UK, the United States, and Germany, despite being given all the bullets, weapons, missiles, pretty much anything that the Israeli military wanted, despite having Iron Dome and all of these other military systems, despite all of these things, despite people like Matt Miller and Patel lying and shilling for the Israeli government, despite people like John Kirby, who gets out there and dance and sings at the behest, once again, of the Israeli government, despite these creatures like Blinken, or for that matter, Hashtin, who is representing the Israeli government as opposed to representing the interests of the United States government, despite all of these advantages, Gallant is saying the quiet part out loud. We cannot accomplish our military objectives. And let's be very clear, they're hiding the ball on this. Gallant knows full well that part of the military objectives and blowing up houses, schools, mosques, sanctuaries, UN or refugee camps, to killing doctors, to killing journalists, they know that part of it is to make those regions completely and radically uninhabitable. Meaning, no, we don't want a hospital there because a hospital heals people. We need these people to go. Of course, we're not going to give these people food because we want these people to not be here. If you feed them, they would stay. We want them to go. So yeah, we're going to starve them and we're going to do death marches. That's what we're going to do. Meaning Gallant knows full well what the plan is, what Netanyahu is trying to accomplish. He is hiding the ball. What is honest in that is the military is suffering. The military is creaking. It's been 1 year of war. This war has become aimless. His words, by the way, aimless. And the objectives have evolved in a way that we need to have a rethink about what we're doing and whether or not some level of hard choices need to be made, especially if they're going to get the hostages back, which I don't really believe they care about. And I think this is less to do with the hostages and more to do with the cover for the military suffering, especially in southern Lebanon. The stats came out, public records, right here. 2,601 Israeli soldier casualties inflicted by Hezbollah since the beginning of the invasion of Lebanon. Israel is taking heavy casualties in a way that they were not taking either in Gaza, or for that matter, that they obviously were taking in their air campaign, or for that matter, in the West Bank. They've come up against a militia that is battle hardened and is trained, and that battle hardened militia on the ground has been able to inflict casualties in a way that has been painful to the Israeli military. So much so that Gallant has basically come out and said in the quiet part out loud, we will need to make painful choices if indeed we're going forward. You guys are listening to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I'll be back. Welcome back to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning. My name is Jamal Thomas. Whether you're listening on your radio, whether you're listening, well, I guess you could be listening on radio, whether you're on your way to work, whether you're at work, whether you're cleaning the house, whatever you're doing. This voice in your ear is what should be taking place. This is going to be the best damn morning show, whether on radio, whether on TV or anywhere else. The best news, politics, analysis, commentary, etc. And I want you guys to help me grow this channel. So, like, share, definitely hit the notification bell, just so you would know when I pop in. I tend to pop in at all hours of the night. I'm a bit of an insomniac. So there's that. I definitely appreciate all of you joining me. We're doing damn good today. I'm trying to grow this channel at least by 40,000. I'm trying to break this 30,000 streak. I am trying to hit 40,000 by Christmas. That is my objective, and I would like you to help me with that objective. So share it far and wide. Like it. If you like it, if you really like it, feel free to give PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, any of those things. I'm going to read some of the chats just before my guest comes in. Janice Anderson, her drop in the polls coincide with the Cheney endorsement and release of her platform. They are entitled people who think they can bully vote to support. You know what's wild about that? I agree with you in part, right? Because all things being equal, if you're a Democrat, it's somewhat demoralizing for the candidate to run around the country with a Republican, and not just any Republican, a Cheney of all people. I'm old enough to remember the Olbermanns, or Keith Olbermann, screaming at the top of his lungs every night, talking about Bush and Cheney being warmongers and war criminals. So it is a bit rich that now Kamala Harris has decided they're great statesmen because they're supporting her and taking them around the country. Janice, can't say I disagree with you. I would add one more thing, though. When Kamala Harris first got into the race, she had a glow. Now, part of the reason for the glow is because people were demoralized by Joe Biden. She gets into the race and they're like, oh my God, thank you. We have something different, a breath of fresh air. And the difference wasn't esoteric. The difference was literal and obvious. Old, white man, young, woman of color. Very different. And because of that, on some level, the people believed that something was going to be fundamentally different. But when she started opening her mouth and started asking her, or people started asking her questions like, hey, what are you going to do different? She didn't have an answer. Hey, what would you have done different? She didn't have an answer. So a country where a large number of people, the majority, thinks we want something different, and she's not able to articulate a difference. That is not good. So yeah, I think it's a few points. I agree with you. Running around the country with Dick Cheney is not necessarily the best thing in the world. Abandoning her base, not necessarily the best thing in the world. Ignoring, or at the very least downplaying, the issue of Gaza and not having a difference of opinion on that issue. Again, a drag on the campaign. All of these things are a drag on our campaign. Not going through a primary, a drag on the campaign. Basically, she was not selected by the public. She was chosen by the creatures in Washington. All of these things are drags on the campaign. So there are a few issues with it, right? The well-dressed nerd, Brave's review. What's going on, Brave? JT, try StreamYard. Its setup is easier to manage and free. The way you can take time to square away the current platform's audio kinks. So Brave, I am using StreamYard, by the way. This is my first time using it, which is why I'm a little bit clumsy and trying to get it straight. Up to this point, I had to use Zoom. But now, StreamYard was a better system just because much of the features were already built into the system. So it was kind of less manual control, but I do need to get accustomed to the controls. So, technical difficulties are there, but I'm going to get them straight. Stay tuned and stick with me. I'm not going, bear with me. Anastasia Beaverhausen, Kamala's Jew husband, wish we just say Jewish husband, says he'll mount a mezuzah on the White House door if she's installed, signifying the Jewish conquest of the White House. No hiding it. Look, spending AIPAC, spending $100 million to influence and to buy our politicians is enough. Her husband doesn't factor into it. Let's keep going. Carry on Arnold, super sticker. Thank you, Carry On, man. Really appreciate it. DC, when you're playing clips, mute mic room audio is masking. I don't know what masking means. At least, again, I don't know anything about the engineering part. This is something I'm learning on the fly. I used to have an engineer at the radio station. But I do mute the mic when the audio is playing. At the very least, I try to. So there may be a slight lag in doing so. But I am waiting on my guest. He should be on very soon. At least I hope he will be on very soon, considering that the guest for 8:15 canceled on me at the last minute. Let me see if he is hitting me up. He should be here soon. I'm going to be joined with Esteban Carrillo. And just to give his heads up, because I have that much trust that he's going to join me, Esteban Carrillo is a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist and current editor for The Cradle. He was previously with Tele Sur English, another great institution that I enjoy immensely. I don't see him, at least not yet, but I'm sure he will be coming very soon. At least I hope he will be coming very soon. Another issue that came up, Barack Obama. Obama is making his final pitch. Now, he is trying to do Kamala Harris a favor. And what I mean by that is, if you find yourself lagging in the polls, then the best weapon that you will have at your disposal is Obama. Great talker, eloquent, brilliant, to put it mildly, meaning whatever you want to say about him, brilliance is not something that he is lacking in. And Obama is going to come out and try to make the argument for Harris. And he's going to try to deal with various groups. Because as you remember, various groups have been, let's say, floating away from the party. And there was this notion of black men specifically apparently not being sufficiently loyal, Hispanics going towards the Republican Party, and even from the standpoint of workers, as I pointed out, this idea of a blue-collar billionaire being able to get workers is pretty astonishing. And it's not necessarily something we've really seen before. Usually unions go directly to Democrats. That has not been the case this time around. So Obama, trying to make the case for Harris, goes out and says, oh, by the way, even goes for Muslim voters, tried to make the case for them. Obama, making the final pitch for one, Kamala Harris. Let's play the clip number 2, I believe.
But does that mean you'll support somebody who, if you're a Christian and you care deeply about the abortion issue, I understand that, but does that mean you'll support somebody who seems to violate pretty much every precept of the Ten Commandments? If you are a service member and you're somewhat conservative and you're used to voting Republican, I can understand it, but somebody who genuinely does not believe in duty and honor and does not understand why anybody would sacrifice themselves on behalf of their country, why would you do that? If you're a Muslim American and you're upset about what's happening in the Middle East, why would you put your faith in somebody who passed a Muslim ban and repeatedly suggested that somehow you weren't part of our American community? somebody whose values seem to indicate that you're not part of their equation? How do you think it's okay? How can you tell yourself it's okay as long as our side wins?
I think Obama's missing the point. Now, whether he's missing this point intentionally or whether he's missing the point by accident, I think Obama's missing the point. Look, the Muslim community is not voting for Trump. I mean, look, they're not voting for Trump for reasons of loyalty or that they think Donald Trump is somehow trustworthy. That's not where that's coming from. They're voting for Trump because they are punishing the Democratic Party for backing a genocide that is killing their people. My producer at Fault Lines, Laith, was Lebanese Palestinian from standpoint of heritage. And he would point out they hate Democrats in Michigan. They hate Democrats in Michigan. It is Joe Biden who's sitting there backing this genocide, and they blame Joe Biden for it. Now, why wouldn't they blame Joe Biden for it? Now, Democrats would make the argument, or even Obama would make the argument, but Donald Trump is going to be worse. Donald Trump thinks this about you. Donald Trump thinks that about you. Fair enough. That is conceptual. Donald Trump is not in that office. Joe Biden is currently in that office. Joe Biden is the one that is giving money. Joe Biden is the one that's giving bullets. Joe Biden is the one giving missiles and intelligence and defense and cover in the United Nations Security Council. Biden is doing those things. When Joe Biden is saying we're working for a deal, we're working for a deal, we're working hard for a deal. Okay, but let's be very clear though. 70% of what Israel has used over the past year to fight this war has come from the United States. 70% of what Israel has used, meaning the money and resources, 70% of it has come from the United States. So when Joe Biden looks at you in the face and say, I don't have anything to do with it. I've been asking them to change their ways, but 70% of what they've done have come from you. Meaning our tax dollars has been paying for that genocide. And it's clear as day that it is impossible for Israel to operate and expand those wars and kill those people and burn people alive without our support. Fundamentally, completely impossible. They can't do it. They can't maintain the war. They couldn't keep this going. So when over and over again, where a deal would potentially come up, and Netanyahu was doing any and everything in his power to prevent a deal from taking place, when Hamas was willing to accept a deal, and if a deal would have been made, Hezbollah would have stopped firing the rockets, Iran would have cut down in regards to its, let's say, opposition. They didn't want to do it. And in fact, if you remember, when Hamas was willing to accept a deal, Joe Biden comes out, Matthew Miller specifically saying, Israel has a deal. Netanyahu comes out the very next day, I have no idea what they're talking about. When Matthew Miller is asked, hey, Netanyahu doesn't seem to be on board for this. Matthew Miller with a smirk, why would Israel be against his own deal? And he would say that despite the fact that Israel was saying very loudly, we're not for this deal. Our only deal is for every Hamas fighter to die. They were lying on behalf of Israel, pretending as if Israel was either open for a deal or had a deal. Neither of those two things were true. They were lying in defense of Israel because they can never say Netanyahu doesn't want a deal. He wants to expand the war. So instead, they just shield and came out with all of these statements while simultaneously giving a blank check to Israel. So, if you are Arab, if you are Muslim, and you look and you say, so wait a minute, 70% of what they're doing is coming from us? Why can't you just stop sending the money? Why can't you just stop sending weapons? Why can't you make the weapons or the money conditional? If you can still want to send them, but you want to cut back on the human rights violations. Why can't you make it conditional upon aid getting through? And by the way, we're breaking our own laws, knowing full well that they are starving Gaza, while simultaneously us continuing to give them support that breaches U.S. law. But we're doing it anyway. The fact that we're breaching U.S. law matters less than them continuing what they're doing. We're breaking laws on the whole nuclear deal also, though. But I'm putting that to the side for the moment. The point that I'm trying to make here, it's not about the Muslim community trusting Donald Trump. It's about the Muslim community pointing out, you're in that office. You, not him, you. What Trump does is hypothetical. That is conceptual. That is not something that is a tangible thing. What is tangible is that for the last year, you have given them any and everything that they've wanted in order to wage this war against civilians. These are not two armies. This is one side with nuclear weapons and the other side with bottle rockets. Even in the case of Hezbollah, this is one side with F-35 fighters and the other side with people on the ground with rockets and tanks, etc. But these are not two equal military forces. One has nukes, the other one has nowhere near the technology and the level of sophistication necessary in order to fight a war like that. And yet, the war continues. It keeps going. They're attacking Beirut, knocking down apartment buildings, etc. And again, 70% of it is coming from us. So if you're Arab, if you're a Muslim, you see that. You see that the U.S. doesn't seem to care about your group of people, and that it is perfectly okay to wipe 40 to 100,000 Arabs or Muslims off the face of the earth without any real pushback from the Biden administration, especially when it can only happen with the express support and green and blank check of the Biden administration. Then yeah, you're going to feel some kind of way about that. And any notion of bringing Trump into it, again, is fully conceptual. From their point of view, this is you doing it. You're in that office. You are the one that is doing this in regards to policy. So why should I reward you for genocide? And what does it mean if I do? Meaning, what does it mean in the context of a political party if you tell that political party, not only are you going to commit a genocide, but I'm going to reward you for doing that. I'm going to give you a vote for that, despite the fact of you allowing all of these people to be slaughtered. What does it mean for a political party? And should political parties have standards? Meaning, should there be lines where you say, I can't go there, it's too far? And if anything is a red line, shouldn't genocide be the red line? Elections go beyond individual elections, meaning the political process expands beyond one election. Context in that situation matters. It is better to have it set in stone, hell, set in diamond, something that will be eternal, to get across genocide is a red line. You cannot win an election by pushing a genocide, meaning you can back a genocide or you can win an election, but you can't do both. That needs to be brimmingly clear. I mean, brimmingly in the broad light of day, clear. And so if the Muslim vote or people who are in the country itself that cares about that issue, that is their point. That is their issue. It's not about, do you trust Donald Trump? Hell no. I don't trust Donald Trump. Trump didn't even want to leave after he lost the election. It's not about that. It's about making sure that there are standards in the context of a party, if not the Republican Party, at the very least in the Democratic Party, that we are better. We do not accept genocide, and nor will you be rewarded for such. And if you indeed support such, you will lose. You will lose every election. There could be 1,000 elections after this. You will lose every last one of those elections. This is not about the hypothetical. This is about what is taking place in flat, fact, real world reality terms. Full stop. It's that. That's not the argument Obama is making, though. And I guess my point is, the argument that Obama is making somehow has to climb or overcome this notion of genocide. Meaning, you need to explain to me why slaughtering 40 to 100,000 people, 2/3 of which are women and children, is okay. And is okay in the context of voting your guy or your woman into office. Why should I reward you for that? And again, telling me what Trump may do is not the same thing as telling me what you have been doing for the last year. And you have been backing atrocities, utter horrors, rape, starvation, murder, killing kids, burning people alive, etc., 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 all on our tax dollars. That is the argument you need to make to me. That's the thing you need to explain to me. Why should I reward you for that? And what does it say about a political party if indeed you can back a policy like this and win? It would mean that genocide is okay and that you can run a race, back that policy, and still win. And I'm saying that should not be the situation to which we find ourselves. I don't know what they do in the Republican Party, but I would say at the very least, we should have one political party that is against genocide. Obama, as eloquent as he is, as convincing as he tends to be, in no way deals with that issue. None of them do. And that is what it boils down to for the Muslim vote and for the people, the youth vote that cares deeply about this issue, or for that matter, for anybody's vote who cares deeply about this issue. It's that. Now, I've had conversations with Kamala Harris supporters who in no way fully understand. It was like, well, what about my abortions? I understand you want to have your abortions, fair enough, and I want you to be able to have your abortions. But I need the genocide to stop first. I need that to stop. That's a big deal. It shouldn't be a hard choice to be against that. And for whatever reason, it's a hard choice for you guys to be against that. You have the blue no matter who crowd who just doesn't care. One iota. What is that? One woman screaming at that baby? I don't care but the genocide or something like that? Well, I do. And a lot of us do. And fact of the matter is, you may lose this election on the margins of backing this policy. And I would argue, maybe you should. I'm going to check on Esteban to see where he is. Like, share, subscribe. Take a quick commercial. I'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are enjoying me this morning. We're coming to the last, about 30 minutes of the show. I need to apologize to all of you. For some reason, my guests have abandoned me. It's like, well, you're not on radio anymore, so we don't really care that much to come on. Yes, I'm slightly bitter about it. It's okay. I'm going to hold my bitterness until the end of the show, and I'm going to be a professional about it, at least until the end of the show. But look, if you guys are digging the content, either way, give it a like. At the very least, share it, like it. I'm trying to grow this channel. We have grown about 200-300 over the course of the last week, and that is with, honestly, the first week was somewhat crappy. This week, we're going to do a hell of a lot better. This week has gone a lot better, despite some of the technical glitches that we might have had today. Thank you for staying with me on it. I venture to grow and get better as we move forward, and I will perfect the process as we go along. If you like it, hit the like button, share it far and wide, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you hit the subscribe button for the channel. Make sure you hit the notification button so you will know when I pop in. If you are a super fan and you're really digging it, feel free for Super Chat, PayPal, Patreon. That is my spiel. I kind of have to do that spiel even though I hate doing it. I don't like asking for money. But that's it. Going to the next one. Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi Hasan is a bit of an asshole. It may be the British accent. I don't necessarily know what it is. Liberal, but clock is right. Twice a day, a broken clock. And on the issue of Gaza, he is correct. He has been a very strong advocate for that particular issue, and he has gone on debate after debate, and he has usually cleaned the clock, or whoever he's debating with. He knows the issue extraordinarily well. Mark Lamont Hill is another one who knows the issue extremely well. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Mark Lamont has a degree in Arabic studies. But either way, a big deal was made recently with Mehdi Hasan on CNN. And they're having this kind of roundtable argument on Abby Phillips' show, I believe. And it devolves into chaos. And one guest was even kicked off the show, meaning not allowed back on CNN, after the following was said. Let's play the clip.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing
You're
it.
called a you don't call an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table.
Yeah.
And people will sit there and, no, by me, I'm not calling you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing
You're
it.
called an you don't call an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table. And people will sit there and, no, by me, I never called you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't.
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians on this too.
Yeah, well, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that
Just say I should die.
You should not.
No, I
You just said I should be killed.
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
You just said I should be killed.
Let me
on
just
live
say.
TV.
I said I hope
Guys,
you're...
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
I hope you heard what he said. So they are having a debate on the issue of Hamas. And look, I'm telling you, I've had these debates myself with people on the radio show. Yeah, primarily on the radio show. And you get Republicans who are out of their goddamn minds. Like the level of depravity that is associated with the party on this issue. Whereas the Democratic Party is somewhat conflicted on this issue, and there's a somewhat contradiction in the party on this. There is no contradiction in the Republican Party at all. They utterly hate the Arab Muslim community. And they seem to be perfectly okay with Israel killing as many as they want. It is weird. It is bizarre. I've always been shocked when having this conversation. I remember I had this conversation on Scotty's show. I've had the conversation on my own show. And they seem to be completely in line with whatever Israel has to do. Fair enough. Fair game. 100,000, 200,000. If you need to kill all 2 million, fair game. No issue. In this level of depravity, they also think it's funny that pagers maimed various people in Lebanon. Now, let's be very clear. This idea and the way that the media talked about it was terrorists had pagers that blew up. In reality, those pagers were indiscriminately all throughout Lebanon. In a case, a little girl died. Other case, people were maimed. People were burned. People who had nothing at all to do with Hezbollah injured by the pagers going off. Now, say what you want about Mossad. They were successful in this operation. But the idea that it's comical and it's funny, not so much. Now, in having a conversation with Mehdi, he says, I am an advocate for the Palestinian cause, in which case the other guy, Gurditsky or whatever his name is, says something like, well, I hope your pager doesn't go off, effectively calling him a terrorist. He's effectively calling him a terrorist. And just so you can hear it, I don't want you to think I'm behind the ball on this. That is literally what he is saying. I hope your pager doesn't go off since you are advocating for Hamas. Also, he's advocating for the Palestinian cause. There's that. Not every Palestinian is a Hamas supporter. There's also that. The majority may support him, but the majority support him because Israel has just killed 40 to 100,000 of them, 20, 30,000 children. Yeah, you can imagine if there's an opposition group in that area, the public will most likely be behind it because it's the only thing that's moving and pushing back against what has been taking place over the last 70 years. All right. So he says, I'm an advocate for the Palestinian cause. The beeper or the pager thing happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So he's crisscrossing what he considers to be all of them to be terrorists anyway, from his point of view. So he doesn't necessarily even know the difference between the two. In his mind, if you are supporting Palestine, then you are by definition a terrorist, which is the point of view of Netanyahu, and for that matter, the Israeli public and Israeli government. This guy is supposed to be an American, but he is on American airwaves calling one of the people a terrorist. I'm going to go further into this also, because it's, I want to go further into it, but I'm going to play the clip one more time just so you can hear exactly what he said.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing it. If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing it.
You're called an anti-Semite more than anyone else at this table.
Yeah.
And people will sit there and, no, by me, I never called you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, I'm used to it.
Yeah, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that
You just say I should not.
You should not.
No, I
You just said I should be killed.
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
You just said I should be killed on live TV.
I said I hope
Guys,
you're...
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
She's not a big supporter
Of the Palestinians.
Hamas?
Guys, let me
said
stop.
Palestinians.
Are you?
Am I what? No, of course I'm not.
Palestinians are not.
I
Are you
apologize.
a racist,
I
violent
apologize.
person?
It devolves into utter chaos. Utter chaos. The other part to this that I want to point out, though, going back to Mehdi Hassan being an asshole, if you notice, when he started that off, he says, if you don't want to be treated like a Nazi. So Hassan, even in this, invokes Hitler and Nazi in a conversation with one of the participants on stage. Now, again, we're talking about a group that literally murdered, 50 million people, or at the very least were responsible for the murder of 50 million people. We're talking about a group that were putting Jews in ovens and burning them alive, that were using their skin for all sorts of things, that was using scientific experiments on Jews, Poles, Russians. 30 million Russians were killed, or Soviets, I should say, were slaughtered. They didn't even consider those people human beings. And you are comparing Trump supporters to Nazis. How do you do that? How does that work? Is that really a good comparison between those two things? This is the issue that I have with that. Hassan calls various people, Americans, Nazis. Joe Biden calls 100 million people of this country trash. Hillary Clinton boosts the Nazi angle. Tim Walz boosts the Nazi angle. Kamala Harris goes out, said Donald Trump is a fascist, doubles down on the whole fascist comment, meaning this is the rhetoric that is coming out of the Democratic Party leading into the final stretch of the race. They kicked him off, calling Republicans Nazis. That's perfectly fine. Why is one okay but the other is not? Meaning, how is Hassan able to sit here and call Americans Nazis, But when a joke is made about his pager being blown up, basically him calling him a terrorist, all of a sudden that's off the table. How is that fair? How is that right? Why is it okay to make this kind of association between Trump supporters and Nazis? Again, if you want to say that Donald Trump is a fascist, okay, I don't think that's true, but okay. I would tend to say, okay, what is the policy that gives you that, short of him not wanting to accept the race? But fair enough. If you want to say that his supporters are Nazis, you are putting a certain spin, tinge. You're casting Americans in colors that I don't think quite fit. And honestly, if you're talking to somebody that was at one of those camps, meaning Auschwitz or one of these other camps that lived through it, I would imagine they would be aghast that you're even making the comparison. CNN took no action against Hassan. CNN said Hassan was a victim, which fair enough. You shouldn't be calling him a terrorist. That's utterly deranged and disgusting. Agreed. But I feel the same way with using this Nazi brush to paint Trump. I mean, it's not like Trump wasn't president at one point. He was president at one point. So, like, the American public, A, is not accepting that premise. B, it's shrill. And it's just fundamentally, I think, untrue. Now, they may think that way, and Democrats, I don't doubt, do think that way. And let's be very clear, there may be some people in the Republican Party that are racist. Fair enough. I think even calling Hassan a terrorist is a bit racist. Again, fair enough. If the shoe fits on some level, you got to wear it. But Nazi? Nazis? It's too far. It's far too far. The language has gotten too hot on both sides. And again, I know they're going into the finals, and I know they're getting shrill and they're getting, revved up and excited and everything else. But Hitler was Hitler. Full stop. Trump, whose body count is less than Obama's, whose body count is less than George Bush. I don't know how you make that claim. Understand, when Obama tried to overthrow the Syrian government, he lied about there being boots on the ground. There were boots on the ground. And when he was incapable of overthrowing the Syrian government because Russia and Iran were invited into Syria and helped stabilize the government, we were using terrorists as battering rams to try to overthrow the Syrian government. That is what we were trying to do. We got 500,000 people killed in the process of doing it. Obama going out, talking about Arabs and whatnot, saying, hey, why would you vote for the Republican Party? Okay, yeah, Donald Trump murdered Soleimani. I don't believe he's a peacenik at all. Nor do I believe that he is this, this peace candidate. As I said before, I think what the American public is seeing is they're so accustomed to just endless wars that when they find a candidate who is willing to make a deal, meaning he was willing to go to North Korea in order to sit down with Kim Jong-un in order to stop missiles from firing into the Sea of Japan. He was willing to do that. The missiles stopped going into the Sea of Japan. That is what I would call a proof of concept, meaning this notion of peace is possible. They just don't take it. How do you compare Trump's presidency in regards to foreign policy and, let's say, the body count? Ended the Afghanistan war, ended brought those people out of Syria, or at the very least stopped this kind of regime change war in Syria. Yes, he stole the oil. Yes, he stole the wheat. Yes, he kept troops basically sitting on that infrastructure because ultimately they wanted to get rid of Assad, and they thought if they can drain Assad of resources, they can keep Assad from rebuilding Syria. So there's that. But from the standpoint of this kind of 100,000 dead body count that was under Bush, or for that matter, under Obama, that wasn't the case under Trump. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. I am not a fan of Trump at all. And as I told you before, I think it's a deal breaker for him to get back into that office. I'm even shocked that people would even want him to get back into that office after not accepting the results of the election. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my point of view on this. I think he's radically incompetent. But we got to be honest on some level. Like, honestly, reality is a thing, right? And if you're comparing death count and death toll, it doesn't compare. It just doesn't. If you want to say it's racist, fair enough. If you want to say sexist, fair enough. If you want to say he didn't want to accept the results of the election, tried to overthrow America, again, fair enough. I said the same thing myself. All of those things may be true. Hitler? But Hitler? And by the way, there was a poll out, and the poll was asking kids, children, Democrats and Republicans. And when you ask those kids, what did they think about a particular candidate? Democratic kids were more likely to say that Donald Trump is like Hitler, despite the fact that they probably know nothing about Hitler or the horrors associated with Hitler, but they're absorbing that stuff from their parents. I'd imagine their parents are talking to other Democrats, they're talking to other liberals, they're talking to each other, and this is the language to which they use to discuss the politics. And so that's what comes out of them, and that's what gets absorbed into those kids. In fact, they went further. Their parents would have been less likely to allow their kids to play with other parents who are Trump supporters. There's a problem with this. There's a problem with this. Like, there's no way we can function as a society if the rhetoric gets this hot and we're seeing each other in these terms. Joe Biden thinks 100 million people are trash. Apparently, Hassan and Democrats thinks the supporters for Trump are effectively Nazis. I don't think they know what Nazis are. At the very least, you can't tell me that you know what they are and simultaneously call the man Hitler. It's just outrageous. It's completely outrageous. And honestly, needs to stop. Granted, we only have another week for the election, so there's that. President Jafar, as much as I have dire needs, I draw the line at being comfortable facilitating evil. Jafar, I don't even have a job. I agree with you. I guess my point is, I'm not necessarily in the most comfortable position myself, but there's something inherently evil about what is taking place abroad. And it is humiliating, it's demoralizing that my tax dollars are going into facilitating that atrocity. So Jafar, you have my complete agreement. We've come into the end of the show, so I'm going to do the chats. When you play clips, mute mic room audio is masking. I will look up the term masking after the show to figure out what that means. Super sticker. Kyron Arnold. Thanks, man. Deeply appreciated. Anastasia Beaverhausen. Kamala Jew husband. I'm just going to say Jewish. The Jew husband thing feels a little weird to me. Kamala Harris Jewish husband. Sahil Mount Mezua on the White House door. If she's installed, signifying the Jewish conquest of the White House, not hiding it. Look, considering AIPAC can dump $100 million into the primary process in order to choose who they want in the race. And the reason why I'm using the term choose, in congressional races, 9 out of 10 races are chosen by the side with the most money. Or the winner is usually 9 times out of 10 the side with the most money. Which means that it's not even knowing their politics. It's just the money itself is such an overwhelming advantage that 9 times out of 10, it chooses the candidate. So if you're willing and able to put $100 million into a congressional race, meaning congressional races, then you will most likely have a large hand in choosing who is going to be in our offices in this country. I'm saying the fact that AIPAC and many Israeli lobby groups are able to do that, it is directly influencing our politics. For all this talk about the Russians, what about Israel? Why do we not pay attention to the amount of money that they're investing and dumping into our politics? There is a single issue for AIPAC, and that is the state of Israel. It is a foreign government. It is astonishing to me that they don't have to register under the FAIR law And yet they don't. And yet they don't. So talk about a Jewish White House or taking over the White House. They've already taken over Congress. The well-dressed nerd Braves review. JT tries SteamYard to set up easy to manage and free. That way you can square away this current platform's audio kinks. Brave, I'm working through the kinks. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, though. And I will nail the process down. Janice Anderson. Her drop in the polls coincide with Cheney's endorsement and release of her platform. They're entitled people who think they can bully people for support. I think the wild part about it is there are 50 million people, half of the country don't vote. So you're talking about like 50%, like 75 million people, give or take. And yet they spend their time screaming at Jill Stein, screaming that blacks are insufficiently loyal, screaming that the Russians are somehow affecting our politics, that the Chinese and the Iranians are somehow getting involved, that Cuba is spying on us. All of these things, as opposed to just dealing with why are so many people disenchanted of the political process. It's that. That is the issue. Guys, I'm coming to the end. Again, I apologize. But the guests, I will see what is going on. Usually I get a text after the fact saying, hey man, I was asleep. I'm sorry, man. I'll come on tomorrow. I apologize. We'll see if that's the case. But either way, I do appreciate all of you joining me. And definitely stay tuned. I will be here 7 a.m. Monday through Friday. And at various times throughout the day. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all. You all have a phenomenal day. Jamal Thomas Show, signing off.